NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt, just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $5, $6, $7, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out, no house payments for 2 months. At SaveWithConrad.com.
Words are about to be spoken here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by adfreeshows.com and the Podcast Heat Network. I'm John Alba, joined as I am every single week by the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one himself from the Hardy compound in Cameron, North Carolina, Mr. Matt Hardy. Chaotic morning, huh?
Every morning here is chaotic. I live in chaos, chaos in the best type of way. And it's so funny that we're coming from the Hardy compound, or as my wife so elegantly calls it, the forest. And we're here just hanging out and doing a podcast here. And it's really unique that I'm home on a Wednesday. It feels very strange. It's going to allow some cool things. I'm actually going to Maxwell's guitar lesson today. I've never been to one of his guitar lessons because I'm always at work on Wednesday. So that's really cool.
Well, I'm all about that. You know that. I've got like 5 guitars right over there. When Maxwell's ready to start jamming, I'm ready to throw down. I'll have to take a trip to the forest to see how he can jam it out. Matt Hardy, it's good to see you, my friend. I know a busy week for all of you guys out there in California, so you get the week off on Dynamite this week. I'm happy to hear that for you. If you are tuning in live and you're an adfreeshows.com top guy or top gal, you have a chance to interact with Matt Hardy and I live and in living color right now. You can ask questions throughout the show. Our friend Josh Field says, outstanding.
Outstanding, Josh.
Josh Henney says, wonderful.
Wonderful, Josh.
Exactly, because they are watching live. Adfreeshows.com. It's one of those perks of the top guys and top gals. You get to interact live with us. You get exclusive Q&As, watch-alongs. We did our TLC 2 watch-along, which was just so fantastic.
That was a lot of fun, John. I really enjoyed that. And a lot of great questions afterwards, too. And I just want to say hello to all the top guys and top gals that are joining us today. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, seeing the donuts being made behind the scenes.
Yes, how the sausage is made. Josh also says, got 2 shirts from Box of Gimmicks, the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy shirt and Let It Play Out shirt. Those are 2 of our favorites. Boxofgimmicks.com. Go check out the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy collection right now. And who knows, you might even get some more treats thrown your way. Matt, we have so much to talk about. This is going to be a very cool episode, taking a look back at a very unique time period for you just a year ago. But before we do that, I want to start by asking you kind of to put the cherry on top of last week's episode. We spoke at length about what's been going on with your brother, Jeff Hardy. Some incredible feedback on this episode. Anything else you'd like to add on it?
No, I went back and listened to it, watched it, and I was very happy with it. My whole goal in that was to speak from my soul, to be as real, to be as transparent as possible. Transparency is very important to me, especially at this stage of the game, this point in my life, all across the board. I want it in all aspects of my life. So I really tried to be as transparent. I tried to be as fair. And, I tried to take all sides and diagnose the situation from all different sides. And, I really think Jeff has been doing good work, and I'm really proud of him personally. And I'm really proud of the work he's put in to better himself for his family, his wife and his daughters. And I'm very happy we got the feedback we did. It was very positive. And I know there's always going to be 2 different sides to every issue. And there's going to be people that play devil's advocate, and they're not wrong in doing that. But I was very proud at how fair and how honest our episode turned out.
I agree with you entirely. I'm very proud of that episode. Go check it out if you haven't in the archives, extremehardy.com. Matt spoke openly about his brother, Jeff Hardy. And that's what we're going to be doing this week, too, but in a little bit of a different way, because we're going to take a look back a year ago to when Jeff Hardy, it was a year ago as we tape this tomorrow, made his debut in AEW, and we'll talk about the AHFO and some of the matches you had with Sting. I think it'll be a cool little unique period of time to talk about. But before we can do that, let's talk about AEW Revolution. That was the pay-per-view that AEW had this past weekend in California. Matt, we talked about it last week. You know, AEW, even if it doesn't always deliver on the build to some of the feuds, the pay-per-view matches always stick the landing. What do you think of this card?
I thought AEW Revolution was phenomenal. I thought it was a great card from top to bottom. I thought Tony Khan did a great job at putting it together as quickly as he did in some scenarios. But I also just thought all the talent just busted their ass. They worked really hard, really smart. And I thought it was an overall just fantastic pay-per-view from top to bottom. And I think if people bought the pay-per-view, they definitely got their money's worth and they definitely enjoyed it. And it had also, I loved how it was a bit of a variety show. It had something for everyone.
Very much so. I know one that you had your eyes on closely was the final burial match, and it just felt appropriate that Christian Cage was buried one more time. Doesn't it feel appropriate, my friend?
Really good too, and especially I give Christian big props because he was injured. It turns out he didn't have to have surgery, but he had to do some pretty tough and strenuous rehab to get back into the position he needed to be able to wrestle and work again. And he came back in top shape, and he looked like $1 million out there with Jungle Boy, and they had a great match. And I was a big fan of it. It was a big win for Jungle Boy, truly an elevating match. And I was very proud of Christian's work, and I thought Jack did a great job being the young guy who is going to be one of the pillars in the future of AEW.
You a big fan of the cut-off turtleneck?
Oh my God, huge. It's funny. I'd received a text from you afterwards. I saw it and I popped so big when I first saw it. And it definitely warranted a tweet. I knew what was going on in the whole deal. So I already had a tweet setting my drafts for whenever the match ended. But yeah, I was a big fan of the sleeveless turtleneck.
Yeah, I thought that was such a legendary move to just go out there with a cut-off sleeve turtleneck. It fit his character perfectly. They had a fun little match. It's cool seeing different types of matches in AEW too. I know there was a match you really wanted to talk about. We'll talk about the main event, obviously, but the Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley match was definitely a polarizing match for some people on the internet. What did you make of the Texas death match between these two?
I mean, I thought from a story aspect and from a psychology standpoint, I thought it was great. I love the story they told. I'm cool with the violence. There was a lot of blood in it. For some people, it was too bloody. It was maybe too violent. And I do get that. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but there are some people who really, really enjoy that. So I don't mind that being offered on a variety show, so to say. There's some people who hate cinematic matches, but I think cinematic matches every so often are okay and they fit in a variety show. So as far as that goes, I give huge props. And also they were just like fucking badass, courageous warriors to go out and do that to one another. I take my hat off to both Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page. And probably my favorite part of the whole match is that Jon Moxley has been built as the heart and soul of AEW for the last couple of years. He's the guy that has really been the nucleus, kind of like the main current guy. You have guys like Jericho, who's like the established veteran, who's more like a top guy that isn't like the main worker of the show, but Jon Moxley is the nucleus. He is the main worker, kick-ass warrior of the whole show. And the finish of that match was him being beat by Hangman Adam Page clean via a tap out in that Texas death match. And I thought that was a great move and truly elevating match for Adam Page. Yeah,
I agree with you entirely on that. I think Hangman Page, even though he was champion, I think there's some consensus among the AEW fan base that maybe his championship run didn't quite deliver to the level that the build for the championship run did. So I think you have him take a step back, rebuild a little bit, and now you see him come out of a match like this where it's easy to suggest that he should be MJF's next challenger right out of the gate just because of getting the endorsement from a match like that.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a comparison right here, which I think this will ring the whole true. I'm going to compare Hangman's first title run, almost like the Hardys' first title run, even though he was definitely more well equipped to do it at that time. It was an opportunity for him to tie up a feud with Kenny Omega, which was very important, and that storytelling was great. But him being the centerpiece of the promotion, he didn't really have the star power to be it at that time, but it gave him equity as I like to say. It gave him credibility. And by him having that run for a few months and eventually dropping the title to CM Punk, now he's been built and he has been the champion once before. Whenever he becomes the champion again, he'll be the guy that is able to carry the company, put it on his back and carry the company. So it was a big testing. It was a big test for him. And it was almost like an experiment where they gave him credibility, where it was like, as opposed to him helping the belt, the title helped Hangman.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped build him. And the next time he becomes the champion, he'll be the guy that can put the company on his back and run with it.
Yeah, and I don't think his championship run was bad by any means. He had some great matches during it, but I think that compared to the chase, and in wrestling, it's all about the chase, right? Like the chase is where the story is. We've talked about with the Sami Zayn stuff. And the Cody stuff. That's where the money is in wanting to see the heel get their ass kicked. So then when the babyface accomplishes that, it's really tricky and challenging to navigate that path to keep them at that level that they were on the chase.
And also, look at the other names that have been the AEW World Champion and compare them to Adam Page, Jericho, John Moxley, Kenny Omega,
Punk.
CM Punk. All of those guys have been world heavyweight champions in other places. Adam Hangman Page was an AEW original, so to say. He did make a name for himself in Ring of Honor and did stuff there, but I mean, I would consider him an AEW original. And for him to be the first one to hold the championship, I mean, that says a lot because all those other guys are like major players, and they're elevating him into a particular position which he's never been in before. And I think more than anything else, it built equity in Hangman Adam Page, and I think it was a good call.
I agree with you on that entirely. Hey, just want to give a quick shout out. Top guy Carl Watson says he just got a job. Super happy. A great one. Congratulations to you, my friend.
Congratulations, Carl.
That's great news to hear. Thanks for joining us live on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. But I do want to talk about the main event of this show, Matt. Mm-hmm. The 65-minute Iron Man match between Maxwell Jacob Friedman and Bryan Danielson that saw MJF win in overtime. I'm not a huge Iron Man match guy in general because I think it requires you to suspend your disbelief just a little bit more sometimes based on how some of them are laid out. And I actually think the Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart Iron Man match that everyone talks about is like one of the more overrated WrestleMania matches ever, truthfully. But I thought this Iron Man match was hands down the best one I've ever seen. And I thought it was one of the top 3 best matches in AEW history. What do you think of it?
I thought it was phenomenal from top to bottom. And it really is. An Iron Man match, going in the ring and wrestling straight for 1 hour, it is very, very difficult to be able to retain the audience's attention. And especially in the day and age we live in now, the audience is so critical and they have such high standards. It's just outrageous in many, many ways. And the fact that they were able to go out there and wrestle and they kept people interested. They did so much cool stuff. They did so much technical wrestling. MJF played a very smart role as a heel. Even the first couple finishes where there was a deal where Bryan won the match and then MJF got disqualified and then got 2 straight pins. I love that. I love that storytelling, and that was so good, so perfect for his character. And then as the match went on, then they really picked it up and they started doing their bigger spots. And then there were the big double downs. And the whole while, it was a thrill ride that kept you entertained. And it also kept you wondering what is going to happen. And the way the finish was done was perfect. And I almost, if I had to bet they were going to go to a 60-minute draw and then go to a sudden death, I would have bet that, because I know how Bryan Danielson is too. Bryan Danielson's insane. He goes, I don't get tired. I don't get tired. And I almost, like you said, I thought he probably wanted to set the record to actually have the longest match of his career, the longest match he's ever had. But when I saw when the match went on the structure of the pay-per-view, I was like, oh, they're definitely going to overtime, because there was so much extra left past an hour. I think they went on, there was like an hour and 20 minutes left in the show, if I'm not mistaken, hour 25, maybe even. So I dug the match. I thought it was masterful. And those guys, my hat's off to them, because they went out there and they kicked ass for not only an hour, but for, 70 minutes almost. It was a great match, great storytelling. Daniel Bryan was great at being the veteran babyface, and MJF was great at being the heel asshole. Yeah,
and you talk about elevation. I think this match elevated Maxwell Jacob Friedman to an entirely different level, because everyone knows Max is this great character. I've had the fortune of watching Max for 7 years going on now, even dating back to the Indies, but I know not everybody's had that exposure. I've always known this guy can go. He can go in the ring. And
Right.
he proved that in this match, that he can hang in there with legitimately, in my opinion, one of the greatest pro wrestlers ever in Bryan Danielson.
And I know I talked earlier about Jungle Boy Jack Perry being a pillar of AEW. MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, is absolutely also a pillar of AEW in the future going forward.
He would argue he is the pillar, as he suckled down some kosher pickles after the show ended.
Oh my God. The scrum parody was great too. Hats off MJF. I'm down with that. I'm with you. I actually caught him at the gym on Friday before Rampage, and we talked a little bit about his diet, and obviously he'd been eating like a bodybuilder to try and get into the shape he was in, while still trying to maintain his cardio, which is very tough when you're taking in very few carbohydrates. So he just said he was counting down the days till that Iron Man match ended and he could eat a pizza. He said he was eating a full piece pizza that night. And I know that deal. The guy who ran the first gym I went to, Donnie Bridges, where I first met Champagne Marty Garner when I was 16 years old. So I knew I had to gain weight to get bigger to be a pro wrestler. I'll never forget, he had a routine where he would compete professionally in bodybuilding contests. And he would always be so excited for his contest to end, and he would have cheeseburgers and pizza, and they would just eat like insanely amounts of junk food, which was just so great. And MJF, he was feeling it. You could see the motivation in his eyes as he was telling me, I cannot wait until that match is over, until I can eat pizza, until I can just go crazy and go nuts.
Yeah, all-time great match. Bryan Danielson, where is he like all-time for you in terms of professional wrestlers?
I mean, he's up there, especially when you talk about pure wrestling. He's one of the greatest of all times, no doubt. And he's also a guy who has helped break the glass ceiling when it comes to size, because I remember there were times when he first came in, Vince like, he's a vegan, damn it. A vegan can't be the world champion. The way he got over so organically in that program where he won the first match at Mania and then went on to win the title at the end was just so amazing. And that was a great example of WWE being forced to listen to the audience, being forced to follow what the fans want to see. They had to. And that was great. He broke a lot of barriers during that time, and he really changed things for a lot of guys. I mean, I think it's made a huge difference for guys like Adam Cole, for guys like Jack Perry, for guys like Darby Allin. Now they can be perceived at a very top level, even though they're smaller guys.
Bryan Danielson, CM Punk changed the game for that type of wrestler to find success. Even a Kevin Owens doesn't even have the level of success without the Bryan Danielsons and the CM Punks, those types. So they hold a very special place in my heart in terms of how I reflect on their impact. And yeah, man, Danielson's an all-timer. Kills me that we never got a Bryan Danielson Kurt Angle match, because I think that just would have been on another level. You talk about Iron Man matches; those guys would have done a 2-hour Iron Man match. I'm pretty confident in that. So, pretty outstanding stuff. You mentioned Vince there, man. I don't know if you've heard, but rumor has it he's sporting a little stash these days.
I mean, have there been any real pictures?
There's not been a real picture yet.
Is this a rumor that has gone wild? Do we know if this is Matt Fact or Matt Fiction?
If you subscribe to our friend Sean Ross Sapp and PW Insider Mike Johnson, they've spoken to a lot of people who insist that this did in fact happen. It is in fact Matt Fact.
Interesting. Well, Vince, there you have it. The consummate fashion icon, switching it up a little bit, throwing the old stash on. Interesting. He and apparently he sat and grill all night too, right?
He did. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Vince
knows how to dip his toe into the pool before fully submerging himself.
Don't worry, he was just there to visit John Cena, didn't you hear? He wasn't there to do anything else.
Of course. Big
match, John, baby. It's good to see him back. He acknowledged that he's got a bald spot growing in. So, hey, you know what? Yeah, it was very cool, though, Matt. John went on Twitter and he said afterwards, he's like, this was the first time that I've ever gone out in front of a crowd, and said to myself, wow, this might be one of the last times I'm out here in front of them. And just thinking that the sun could be setting on a legendary career like that, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
It is. I mean, for him to actually admit that, and two, I don't know. I feel like, and I'll say this too, we're all promoters at the end of the day. We're all promoting ourselves and our brand. That's also another very smart thing for him to say if he does have something substantial planned going forward, because people would relish it that much more.
No doubt about it. WrestleMania coming up. I'm sure we'll get some WrestleMania thoughts as we get closer. WrestleCon's going to be going on out there. Lots of people signing. Things could be a little interesting over there. I guess we'll just have to let it play out and find
It is
out.
going to be fun. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at WrestleCon. I'm going to be signing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Outstanding. Love to hear that. I'll be doing some work for Fight. I'll be at WrestleMania. Come say hey if you haven't already figured out what your plans are for Los Angeles. All right, Matt, I don't want to waste any more time here. I always appreciate catching up on current events with you, but I want to talk about this little topic at hand, talking Jeff Hardy's AEW debut and the initial reunion of the Hardys. So without further ado, please hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact: Matt finds it strange to be at home on a Wednesday.
For those of you who are watching us, you've already seen 2 House Hardy run-ins. We saw one from Queen Rebecca, which was a very tame one. And then we saw a Barty run-in, and he was staring pretty intently into the camera there.
Yeah. I was surprised he left. I really was. I thought he was going to stick and wait until I addressed him. He really so I spoke with Maxwell, and Maxwell was going to come in and speak for a little bit, and he's kind of ready to do that. He's at that stage of the game where he can. Barty, on the other hand, is not sure what he's going to say. He just he wants to be included because he's young and 3. So he was sitting here, and I was very surprised that he didn't get vocal while he was in here. But he had to go get a shirt on and get dressed because if his brothers were going to be part of the podcast, he had to be part of the podcast.
Well, you did not acknowledge your tribal chief in Barty Hardy there, so he walked away. But maybe we'll see another run-in at some point soon. Let's get into it, Matt. Let's talk about all the events that went down about a year ago, but we got to turn the clocks back a little deeper first. I want to dive a little more into the Hardy family office. We talked a little bit about this on the private party episode a year ago.
Right.
And we know that Big Money Matt was inspired by the Italian Stallion and your early experiences doing the New York hits for WWE.
Right.
How critical for private parties' development in hindsight was it for them to experience life as heels? Because they were such natural baby faces before they paired with you.
Yeah. It was important. I think, especially in this day and age as an entertainer, it's very important to understand how to go out and be a good babyface and how to go out and be a good heel. You need to be able to understand both sides of the spectrum. And I feel like the better you understand both sides, the better of an overall performer it makes you in general. So since day one, I remember coming in right when I was doing Broken Matt Hardy during the pandemic. I mean, that was a few weeks in, I knew those guys, and we had worked with them back at Hog Wrestling, House of Glory, a couple times. And, they said, hey, we were just thinking, could we do something pitch something where you're like our mentor and we do this? And I was like, sure, man, I'm kind of up for anything. We'll just see where things fit storyline wise. I remember that was right from, not day 1, but from day 10 or whatever, they were on it. And obviously it was important to them to be with me, and ultimately they would love to be with Jeff when it was all said and done, because we were their guys, we were their favorite wrestlers when they grew up, and it's funny, I don't know how many times Mark Quinn has told this story, but he was a big man fan. He loved Undertaker, he loved Kane, he was all about that, and that's why he loved pro wrestling until he said he saw the Hardys and he saw the tag team ladder match and the tables match and the TLC match, and then they totally changed, and him and his buddy Zay, they wanted to be a tag team, and then they wanted to emulate the Hardys, which is so crazy and so cool. So after talking to them, they talked about that, and we started that early mentorship during a 6-man tag where it was myself and the Bucks versus those 2 guys and Joey Janela, and one of those guys, Isaiah or Quinn, I don't even remember which one it was, supposedly hurt their knee, and then after the match, when it was over, I went out and helped him, and I assisted him to the back, and that was the beginning. And then they came and said, oh, thanks so much for helping us. We grew up idolizing you. We watched you. And that was the very beginning of me kind of being a mentor to them. And then once things went on, when it was time for me to turn heel, and that's kind of the plan everyone decided on was going to work best to build me back up into being a babyface at some point. We thought the perfect play was for me to take these 2 guys who I could take advantage of because they were young, they were hungry, and sign them to a contract, because Big Money Matt obviously is obsessed with money. I could sign them to a contract where I take a wee fee, which would be only 30%, but I would be able to afford them opportunities that they could never get on their own. And that whole thing was inspired by the Italian style and the Italian Stallion and George South, and our whole scenario of being young kids just hungry to go to WWE. And he took a little more than a wee fee. He took like a large charge because they took 66%. You know, we would make 150 a night when we would do WWE jobs. And then they would drive into a desolate area of forest. And they'd say, all right, if everybody wants to go to the next town, and there's 15, 16 guys in this huge van. He says, right now we're going to need $100 of everybody's money. That's your booking fee for tonight. And everybody would have to pay up, shell out the $100. So we would go for 3 nights at that point. We would do Raw, we would do Superstars, and we would do Challenge. And in theory, you would be making $450 working as extra talent. But we would come home with $150 and they would leave with $300. And then once again, you multiply this times 15. And that's kind of how they were making their livings at that point. So I use that. I kind of use that formula to originally build the HFO and Private Party.
So this was Private Party's idea to come team with you? Like they pitched the idea of joining forces with you?
They did. They pitched that about me being a mentor for them.
Mm-hmm.
That was originally their idea. They pitched it to me and asked what I thought about it. And I said, guys, I know you don't know me that well, but like I'm always down for anything. I mean, if something is good and it's productive and it helps people, I'm down for anything, especially at the stage of the game where I'm at in my career. If I can do anything to elevate you, that's very important. And I've said this many, many times. I think a big part of my legacy right now ultimately ends up how great Isaiah and Quinn turn out. And because I've invested in those guys, specifically, I've invested in those guys. And they're a huge part of my legacy going forward.
I was going to say, that had to be pretty flattering for you, for them to want you to be their guy, to be their Michael Hayes.
Yeah, no, it really was. And I got to tell you, man, when we first started doing that, after we went to the Impact Wrestling tapings and I was kind of bossing them around, there was a couple matches where they did a couple things that were a little bit hillish. And Tony asked me, following the Impact tapings, he said, you think we should turn these guys? You know, like they embrace this change you're kind of pushing on them. And I said, I do. I think it would be good. I think it would work. And we ended up doing it. And we turned on them in a match with Top Flight. If you remember, they grabbed a chair, hit someone, and they won. And we actually got pretty hot at that point with the 6-man tags we were doing as heels, you know, with Big Money Matt, Hill Zay, Hill Quinn. And I really feel like we had a lot of momentum. We were doing good, and we would have continued to elevate as a trios tag until we started adding people. And like, you know, Tony said, we don't have anyone speaking for Butcher and Blade now. They're better when they have a mouthpiece. Do you mind if I put them with you? I was like, sure, I'll do that. But then it became a little excessive. Then they added TH2, and then it was Giorgio, and it became so watered down. And I know in the notes you kind of described the HFO as the Island of Misfit Toys. I described it at the time as the Island of Misfit Toys. That's exactly how I described the group. And it just became so many guys that we really didn't know what to do with, and it was kind of directionless. It just kind of ended up being people that would put other people over.
So that was Tony coming to you. Tony came to you and was like, hey, I think you can help all these different people. Let's put them with you.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of those guys, they were looking to get on TV, but also they were trying to get an established veteran who could be a mouthpiece, who could speak for them and help them very clearly explain their motivations and their character or whatever else. And, you know, considering he entrusted me in that, I'm very grateful and appreciative, obviously, but it just kind of, it became too much. We added too many people, and then it became so oversaturated with talent. We really couldn't focus on like elevating, you know, 2 or 3 different guys at one time. Too many guys.
I think that was the general consensus from the fan base too. It's hard to latch on to individuals if, you know, we're not talking about a main event faction here. We're talking about a faction that, you know, a lot of the work being done with it was being done. If it was lucky to get on Dynamite, great, but otherwise it was mostly happening on Dark, and it's hard to follow all those different pieces. Like George was barely ever on Dynamite with you. He was mostly a Dark character, so it was hard to invest in those guys. But with that said, there's a lot of talent there. I mean, Butcher and the Blade, I've been following those guys for years too. I think they're an amazing tag team. I think TH2 is an amazing tag team. It just feels like kind of a missed opportunity to really flesh those things out and give motivation for why they're all coming together with Matt Hardy.
I specifically think Angelico could be a big deal on his own. He's a good dude, and he is insanely talented, and he's very different than other people, very different on his own. And not only can he go, he's He's a smooth dude. He's very charismatic. He's low key, very charismatic, and I would love to see him get a bigger opportunity going forward too.
Yeah. So simultaneously, while you're running with them on December 9th, 2021, Jeff is sent home from a WWE live event after he walks out in the main event of a match, and he is released officially a few weeks later. As we discussed last year here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy with Jeff in person, you can check that episode out in the archives, extremehardy.com. The company reaches back out to Jeff to offer him to come back, have a Hall of Fame induction, but he actually declines because you're not going to be part of it. Where do you think Jeff was mentally and physically at this point? Now that you have the benefit of hindsight, and we talked very openly and honestly last week about Jeff's journey, where do you think he was?
I think physically he was in a pretty good space. He was pretty healthy at that time. I think mentally and emotionally he felt very underutilized, very undervalued at WWE, especially coming off that. He had that little Survivor Series push where he did the deal with Seth Rollins, right? He ended up being the last person on the team and got a great ovation. And I feel like mentally he felt like he was just kind of being used to put other guys over at that time, and not necessarily just like jobs that make sense. Because I think if you're a veteran, there are jobs that make sense where you're specifically doing something for someone else. Chris Jericho losing to Ricky Starks, a job that makes sense. Matt Hardy losing the Hook, especially considering the context of the story that Matt Hardy is setting up Stokely and he's, going to get his way out of the firm. That makes sense. It's a job where it's a win-win. I feel like Jeff felt like he was just doing some meaningless jobs that didn't make sense. It wasn't where he was, his character and his legacy and his status as an iconic performer wasn't being valued as much as it should be. And then at that point with the schedule of still working house shows, I think he was just done, mentally burnout. And I think from a substance abuse issue, he wasn't bad. Obviously there was still some drinking going on here and there. But especially when they kind of leaked the info that he had been sent home, and then they said that he was to be drug tested, but then they never, after that info was leaked and that he was fired, which he was promised it wouldn't be, and they said, okay, well, we're going to fire you and we're going to give you this drug test. They never gave the results of that drug test either, which he hated more than anything, which was a little unfair on that behalf, but that was them kind of covering their ass. That's kind of what they do, right? The first couple months after that, I thought he was really good. I heard later from his wife, there were a couple isolated incidents where they didn't like his conduct and maybe he had drank too much at home, whatever, but it was very isolated incidents. And then, once he got back on the road with AEW, he was pretty good for the majority of the time. And as I said in the episode last week, I think it was the week in Vegas where there was just so much temptation around and maybe stressed from the schedule, whatever it may be. Physically, he wasn't terribly hurt at that time. He was okay. A lot of people said, oh my God, he should have never done this stuff with Darby Allin, but none of that hurt him, and I think that week in Vegas was kind of a hinge event for him. I think that's where it kind of became a little too much and he slipped back into a bad space.
Yeah. And I think based on everything you shared at the time, it seemed like there were some indications that a lot of the WWE stuff was just a lot of misinformation floating around. And there was a lot of he said, finger pointing. But ultimately, as you alluded to, he gets his release. There is a non-compete that comes with the release. So he's sitting on the sidelines. Eventually, you get paired with Andrade on television. And on January 19th, you sell majority share of the Hardy family office to him, and it becomes the Andrade Hardy family office.
Right.
On the surface level, kind of an odd pairing, but no doubt, Manny is one of the most talented guys in all of pro wrestling. What'd you make of the decision to link up with him out of the gate?
I like Manny a lot, man. I really do like him. I got to work with him on we did a tour of South America with WWE when I was still there, probably in 2019, and I worked him 3-4 nights back to back. Really enjoyed the matchups. They were a lot of fun. And just a cool guy overall. It was good. We had determined at that point, regardless of what ended up happening with Jeff, I was going to turn babyface again. And Arn Anderson, I know that's one of your favorite people in the world. Arn Anderson is
Arn.
also one of my favorite people in the world. He's always said, like, Matt, I think it's a bad move for you to be a heel. Like, people have grown up with you. Wrestling fans have seen you guys come from nothing and make something of yourself, and they know your story. You're the ultimate underdogs who became big stars, and it's really hard to boo that. You know, people want to support you. They don't want to see you wrestle each other, and they really don't want to boo you guys. And I was going to turn babyface regardless of if Jeff ended up coming in or not at that point. So that was going to be my way out. There was also a B plan that we talked about where the AHFO could have been where I turned babyface, but Private Party may have turned babyface and been with me at that time too.
So you just said B plan. Does that mean that the A plan was that you were going to be pairing back up with Jeff?
The A plan is that I was going to turn babyface.
Okay.
It was literally I was going to turn babyface regardless if Jeff came or not. There were no Jeff plans. They didn't make Jeff creative plans. Tony refused to do that. The only after Jeff got released from WWE, and I'll never forget, I was driving to the airport. I got a call from Jeff that morning. He said, "Hey, look, I just talked with Johnny. This is about to drop. They told me they want me to go to rehab. I took this drug test. They haven't even waited on the results. I told them I'm not going to. And, I haven't touched a drug and I haven't done any kind of drugs. And they said they're going to release me. And I said, okay, that's fine. Release me. He said, but I want you to hear it first because I know, your phone's going to blow up later in the day. And we were in New York when this went down. And then I remember I got on the plane, and whenever I landed in Raleigh, it was just like I had 50 texts. My Twitter notifications went through the roof. And of course, everything was out. The first people were saying, "Oh my God, now that Jeff's gone, can you guys do bookings again?" Or, it was just insane. And I'm glad he gave me that heads up about things. And whenever I went to TV the next week, the first thing I ever heard from Tony Khan was just like, "Hey, how's your brother? Is he okay?" Because he's met Jeff before. Actually, they were going to one of Ric Flair's birthday parties. Tony and his girlfriend was there at the time. Jeff and his wife Beth. Rick was there, obviously. A couple other guys, but they had met on that occasion. They hung out that night, and they really hit it off. And Tony just asked me, he said, like, "Hey, is your brother good?" And I said, yeah, he's good. And I kind of explained to him the whole deal of what went down. He said, "Okay, well, just let him know I was asking about him, and I hope he's good." He said, "And if you hear later on down the road, like when we can talk to him and when his no compete clause is up or whatever, let me know." And that was literally the first conversation I had with him about Jeff being released. That's all.
So it really was just kind of out of, hey, down the line, this might be something we can do.
Yeah. I mean, and literally I could have turned babyface, done a program with Andrade for 4 weeks or whatever on TV, and then Jeff could have showed up. I mean, there was no plan. There was no plan set at that time.
Well, how seriously did Tony take the tampering aspect of things? Because Tony has been outward about this, that he has felt WWE has tried to tamper with AEW talent in the past.
He takes it serious as a heart attack, as the old expression goes. I mean, he's very like he won't do it. He feels like it's not worthwhile to do. So the way that deal went, so we know I'm turning babyface at some point, right? It turns out Jeff's no compete clause ends on a Tuesday, and there's a Dynamite the next night. It's just, I mean, what are the odds? I guess it's 1 out of 7 in the big scheme of things, and you can break down that odds. But like,
that's Steiner math there, pal.
Yeah, out of that 1 of 7, his chances are 1 of 7 that it could end the day before a Dynamite, and it does. And then I'll never forget, I'm at home, and we were going to Fort Myers, Florida, and because we had just come off a pay-per-view, we had just done the Revolution match that we had, that we were going to talk about, and we are going to talk about. We had just done that, and then I flew home that Monday morning, and I've told them this too. They know I have 4 young kids, and my kids are my world, and it's very important. Anytime I can get home and see them, I don't waste time on the road. I come home. So I came home first thing that Friday morning. I spent all of Monday. I spent Tuesday with them, and then I was flying out early Wednesday morning. I had to get up at 6 a.m. to go to the airport to catch a 8:30 flight and make my way down to Fort Myers. So I'll never forget. I was there and it was late, and I was like, God, it's midnight. I've got to go to bed. And like once it hit midnight, and now Jeff is technically free, I text like, "Hey, Tony, are are we going to do anything with Jeff? Nothing. Hey, Mega, are we going to do anything with Jeff? Nothing. And I didn't hear anything from anybody.
Can you explain who Mega is for people who may not be aware?
Yes. Mega is the head of legal in AEW, but she's also a big contact for a lot of the talent, you know, and I would imagine these guys are probably, if they're traveling, or they could be traveling, they could be asleep. They have a day of TV tomorrow. So it's a busy day as it is anyway. So the next morning, I think I have my alarm set for 6 o'clock, and I want to say at like 5:45 a.m. I get a call from Bryce from talent, and Bryce is also a referee. Just to clarify that, he also does some people's he does some talent's travel, and he did my travel. He said, "Hey Matt, I'm sorry to be bothering you, but I had just heard if Jeff is available to fly later today and would like to come down to AEW to even talk or perform. I don't know what's going on. I've just been notified to give you this message. Could I get his information?" Sure. So I do that. I let him know. And then they end up texting Jeff, and they couldn't even get him a flight until late. It was afternoon. It was like 1 o'clock or so, 1:30. And then it's so funny. Like, Beth was wanting to go, and then she ended up booking a flight that morning, and then she begged Rebby to go, and she bought a flight for Rebby as well. And then they ended up being all on different flights. Just she wanted someone to accompany her down. And then as we were doing that, which was a chaotic day, I said, like, I don't know, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna end up being here? Whatever. But that was the chaos of that day. And then I was traveling, and I had no idea if everyone was gonna make it, if I was gonna make it, if Jeff was gonna make it, if our wives were gonna make it. I didn't know. That's where we were at.
Well, we'll get into how that day unfolded in just a minute here. But you did mention, you had an early wake-up call that day. Thankfully, Matt Hardy, you were able to get going because you had your AG1s in tow. Hell yeah. Look at that graphic. Man, that is green goodness right there. All in one cup. Matt Hardy, I get asked this all the time. John Alba, you look like a stallion. How do you stay fit? Okay, I'm just horseshitting there. That's not what I get asked. But I do say I would love to look like a stallion one day. And the way that I can do it is with one delicious scoop of AG1 every day. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, and so much more to help start your day right. It is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, containing less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And yeah, man, you need that sleep quality, do you not, when you got to wake up at 6 a.m. to catch a flight?
You do. I absolutely need it. I need it if I'm waking up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., or 9 a.m. There's nothing that gets my day going better than a nice cold AG1s in the morning.
Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin, so it's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body is actually going to absorb. AG1 is a small microhabit with big-time benefits. It's one thing that you can do every single day to take great care of yourself. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Just 1 scoop in a cup of water every single day. That's it. No need for a million different supplements and pills to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to hook you up with a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. And Matt Hardy, how many free travel packs?
5 free travel packs.
Because that's just right in the wheelhouse here at the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. You're going to get all that with your first purchase. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Hardy. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Hardy to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Josh Henney says, I need to try this AG1 stuff. I'm going to get on their site right after this episode and quit procrastinating.
That's it. Josh, that's a good Josh fact. Josh should quit procrastinating.
I like that. Good Josh fact.
Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley and Pod listeners about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
An all-new edition of The Insiders is here, as Conrad sits down with former WWE exec John Filippelli who discusses his transition from the world of sports to pro wrestling and his ultimate transition out of the company.
Every take was getting worse than the one before it. I said, you got to stop. You got to stop this. You got to calm down. Stop. Calm down. Stop yelling at people. Take it easy. Tell them exactly what you want and we'll get through it. Which is, I have done 100 times since, and I would do 100 times more.
Yes.
But that was Vince McMahon, and you don't do that to Vince McMahon, particularly in front or around
Other people. Yeah.
That was my mistake. I mean, if you want to call it a mistake, although I would do it, I've done it since, and I would do it again.
Referee Nick Patrick is answering your questions every other Monday on our new mailbag series.
When Hall and Nash was there, you know, they were great workers, so they could compete, had psychology. But they were cool. And a lot of people liked it, you know? Yeah, we're selling merch, you know? And Hogan had heat. He had actually more heat than them. You know, they had heat, but a lot of people liked it because they were cool. I was the only real character that they was calling NWO at the time that everybody hated. You know, yeah, everybody wanted to see me get so it worked, you know, they had, you know, Saturday and yeah, and so it worked, you know.
Tony and Conrad have taken their shenanigans in front of a live studio audience as they sat down live with ad-free shows members.
Hey, did you ever pet Jake's snake?
No, never did. I had a chance to in Chicago, but it was way too big and out of my league.
What's the right size snake for you?
One that just coils up and leaves me alone.
Yeah.
Have you ever oranged a Cassidy before?
Orange to Cassidy?
Yeah.
Would that be with one of those juicers, the juice machine, or you just squeeze it until all the juice comes out of it?
Yeah, it runs down your leg or his leg.
You gotta be specific here with your dumbass questions here, Cassio.
That's just a small taste, a sample of what you the 4 level to 4. Ad-free shows with the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now. Right now. Ad-free shows.
Let's keep rolling here, Matt Hardy, because you and Andrade are running for a bit, and you end up in a program with Sting and Darby Allin, and eventually Sammy Guevara. And a match is made for AEW Revolution a year ago in Orlando. It's the three of them versus you, Isaiah, and Andrade. And this is thrown right before the main event of Adam Cole and Hangman Page. Tough spot to be in, but it is a Texas Tornado Trios match. You guys go all over the arena here. It is chaos. There's a Spanish fly off the stage with Zay and Guevara. You and Sting are fighting in the crowd. Sting comes off the guardrail and Andrade goes through tables. You end up eating the pin here.
Sting comes off like the balcony over one of the entrances into the arena.
It was a spectacle. You end up eating the pinfall here. I was looking at the observer's notes from it. Dave Meltzer loved this match. He gave it 4 stars. Just you working with Sting and Andrade. It's a crazy collection of talent. What kind of memories do you have about this match?
It was very enjoyable, and I was glad we were able to get that stipulation, and it was very cool to be working with Sting. Anytime you get to work with Sting, it's a big deal, even for me still. I mean, Sting is legitimately one of the guys I could say Jeff and I idolized growing up, because when we were young kids, we got to watch Sting right in the beginning when he first came to, NWA and WCW. It was such a big deal. His match with the Ric Flair, Clash of Champions. I mean, so cool. Obviously, he was very motivational to Jeff in many, many ways with the face paint, between him and Ultimate Warrior and Muta. Those are the inspirations for Jeff's face painting. It was a lot of fun, and it was cool too that we had some young guys in it as well. We had Isaiah in it. It was going to be a match. It was going to elevate him for sure. He was going to seem like a much bigger deal being in this match. And then you had 2 other pillars: Darby Allin, a pillar of AEW, and you have Sammy Guevara, a pillar of AEW. Those guys definitely, I think they're going to be the future of AEW as well. So it was great working with them. And I'd worked with Darby a couple of times. I really enjoyed it in the past, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought the way we told the story in this match, it was chaos. We did this, and at the end, I end up losing once again. It was a job that made sense, because now these guys were going to turn me out, and I was turning babyface anyway. So to do a job as a heel, a bad guy, does not hurt you if you're getting ready to change career course going forward anyway. So it was a job that made sense. It was a meaningful job. So it was great. And on top of that too, we elevated Darby Allin a little bit too by him getting another, clean win over me.
There are a lot of people who make the comparisons between Darby and your brother. I'd love to know from your perspective, how similar are they?
They're very similar. They're eerily similar, and it's so strange how they're both very different. They're both like these enigmatic performers, and they just kind of, I feel like they really don't care what people think about them in general. They're just like doing their thing, and if you don't like them, fine. If you love them, fine. They really don't care either way. And just the fact that Darby was willing to take so many chances with his body, that's very, very much reminds me of Jeff and how my brother was, especially when he was young. I feel like he tries to take more calculated risks now, but he's still a maniac. He has been. His entire career, wrestling has been a maniac. So, yeah, there's definitely some similarities. And I know Darby was a big Hardy fan, too, coming up as well. So I'm sure that ultimately ended up very cool that Darby got to work with Jeff Hardy as well. And they're very similar. And it's eerie how similar they are in some ways. And one thing I do got to say, I was so cool that I got to do that moment with Sting where we went through the crowd and we fought up. And like, Sting's someone I have so much respect for. And it's cool because at AEW, I've actually got to know him a lot more personally and get to share experiences with him. And we talk about some of our past experiences and how fucked up we've been and how we've changed and how you turn out better and how you appreciate life. And it's so great talking about stuff like that, real life stuff, meaningful stuff with someone that you admired and someone that is just such an icon as Sting is. And just to be considered a personal friend and be able to know him on that level is very, very cool. But I'm so happy that we got to do that fighting up through the crowd. It was so great. As I was like nailing him, finally it's like, move, and just like him even being happy how I was taking charge, to make sure to get the crowd out of the way, whatever, and get to where we needed to go. And the fact that spot happened, I'll be honest about it. Sting very much wanting to stay as popular and as relevant as he can, and as he's an older performer. That was the first spot that was in the match. He said he wanted to jump off a balcony somewhere, put somebody through some tables, and that was more or less going to be his highlight spot. So then we kind of constructed and we forged the whole match around that spot. And we just had to figure out a way to get there and do that because he's right too. Sting, a very, very special performer. And he's had a great impact and been so good for AEW. And the fact that we keep him at this certain level because he is so iconic, it's great. And that was the perfect spot for him. And he did it. And I love the fact that he's still fearless, even being older, being in an advanced stage, much like I am as well. I love the fact that he was fearless and he was game for that and up for that. And that match was a blast. I had such a fun time in that match.
When he's pitching a spot like that, is the little kid in you just cracking a grin when you hear that? And you're like, fuck yeah, man. This guy's he's awesome. He
is awesome. I got to share this one story real quick, even though we're fast forwarding a little bit. This is no spoilers. Whenever we had that 8-man tag against Butcher and Blade and Private Party, it was myself, Jeff, Darby Allin, and Sting. There was a point where that balcony was out there, and Darby said, "Hey, come out here, guys. I've got an idea. There's a balcony. Like, Jeff, do you want to jump off this? Like, I can jump off of it if you guys want me to, whatever." And we were sitting there, the four of us. You got Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, Darby Allin, and Sting. And Sting's sitting there, and he's looking at it. And we're just kind of, and it's just the baby faces. Nobody else is out there. And Darby had pitched it. Like, I think Jeff or I could jump off of it. And we're sitting there, and Sting's going, "Okay, well, look." He said, "Matt, you don't want to jump off that, do you? You don't want to jump off that, do you?" And I was like, I mean, if it's needed and if it's in the match, sure, I will. He said, "Well, I'll jump off of it. Maybe we just all the guys could be down there. I'll jump off of it." And Darby and Jeff were like, "No. I mean, we'll do it." Jeff's like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it." But the whole fact that he just like the two of them were talking about doing it, and he just like said, "Matt, you don't want to jump off that, do you? I'll do it." And he like threw his name in the hat and put it out there. I still pop so huge on that moment to this very day.
That's awesome. And we'll talk about that match here in just a minute. But it's awesome that you guys all get to work together. So I want to just reiterate for anyone who's transcribing quotes from this podcast or any potential FIs out there, no communication whatsoever between anyone in AEW and Jeff Hardy, aside from yourself, obviously. None whatsoever until midnight. correct?
No, there was none at midnight.
Yeah, correct.
It was the next morning at 5:45 a.m., 6 a.m.
And even in your conversations with Jeff, you're not having any about, hey, what if we did this with you? There's no logistical planning and contract, hey, this is what a deal would look like. None of that between you guys?
No, I mean, I think we probably the furthest the conversations with myself and Jeff, if you end up coming to AEW, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that. But that was it.
All strictly hypothetical.
Everything was strictly hypothetical. I was there. I got to the venue earlier that day. Everybody else ended up traveling, and they were all like, Beth and Rebby were on the same flight, and those plane tickets were expensive as shit too. But they were ended up being on the same flight. Jeff was on a different flight, and I just remember that day I got asked whenever I got to TV, and I got there earlier that day. Said, hey, like, if we just changed your deal to 2 more years and we put something along the same line for Jeff, you think he would be okay with that? I mean, and this is like lunchtime, on that Wednesday. I said, sure. So then they started like putting together a contract at that time.
So they literally put Jeff's contract together the day that he debuted.
Yes, the day he debuted. Yes.
Wow. And because you're the one doing all Jeff's business work anyway, you are the secret sauce of the Hardy Boyz.
Yeah, of course.
You're like, yeah, he'll love that. It'll be great.
I mean, I'll say this too. I'll never forget. So we were in Fort Myers. It was Eastern time. And I'll never forget when we first talked to the lawyers and the contract people after Jeff got there later that day. It was after 6, maybe 6:15, 6:30. And I remember they're saying, okay, well, this is kind of like the contract we're looking at. And they kind of went over it with us for like 15 or 20 minutes. I remember people were coming in to the venue, and we were right behind a curtain there, like where we could see people ushering into the venue. Like the doors are open for the show to start. Elevation was going to be starting shortly. That's when Jeff was first given the contract, and we looked over.
Mm-hmm. So you had a babyface presentation in mind for yourself, regardless of whether Jeff was coming in or not. Did that include going back more to the old school Hardy look? Maybe. I mean, it all depended on what Jeff did. If it had been a deal where I just turned babyface, and if Jeff wouldn't have came that day, it would have most likely been myself and Private Party turning babyface. They would have got kicked out as well, because they also were Andrade was hot at them for like getting beat and doing jobs. That if you go back and watch that story, Private Party also had heat, and and that's when we ultimately made the decision, like very late in the day. Does Private Party turn with me, and do they get beat down too, and do they become baby faces, and then we do it the right way as the Hardy Party, or do Private Party stay with Andrade and end up being heels? And that was going to be if Jeff was going to ultimately come in. I guess I just asked because you and Jeff did the photo shoots at home like a week or so before. You guys were planning on going out on the road as the Hardys, regardless of whether he came into AEW or not.
Regardless, yes.
Yeah,
we were planning on going out regardless, because we had bookings that weekend. We were working Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like we'd had stuff, and that's all we did was build to that. The AEW stuff was going to end up being happenstance, one way or the other. If Jeff ends up coming, and we work something out, great. If he does it 4 weeks later, great. If he doesn't, then he doesn't. So we didn't know. It was really all up in the air, more than probably anyone will ever actually believe. But everything was up in the air.
And I know some people would be like, well, how'd they have the Hardy Boy theme acquired and everything? And there's actually a story behind that it's literally coincidence that AEW ended up with the Hardy Boy loaded theme. Do you want to share that with anyone about how Mikey Ruckus got in hold of the Hardy Boy theme?
He got in hold of them, and it was also in Warner Brothers Discovery catalog.
Right.
It was in their library. So it was like no hard deal to get a hold of it. And once again, I was going to use that in the beginning. And was I going to wrestle in Hardy Boyz clothing? I don't know. Maybe if I wrestled with Private Party, it may have been a different variation of what Matt was wearing to project whatever we were trying to give off at that time. But we were going to have that Hardy Boyz music. And we knew if Jeff did come, then that was going to be a huge deal.
Yeah, I say that because I remember speaking to Mikey Ruckus. I was speaking to him at Revolution, and I was like, "Hey, I heard you got the Hardy Boy theme, just in case, like, Matt ever wants to use it down the line." And he was like, yeah, man, like we acquired this whole bank of music and it just happened to be in there, which is crazy. Like, what are the odds that all those things line up just for this to possibly happen? And it's not even cemented. I mean, so much so, and this is real life here. You and I taped like 5 episodes that week. We taped the entire Becoming Broken series that week in person together. And we taped 2 separate opens, one for if Jeff Hardy showed up in AEW that week, and the other for if he didn't, because we had no idea what was going to happen.
That fact.
So good. So good. It was that was a fun week of tapings. We laid down a ton of content. Go check out the Becoming Broken series if you haven't. ExtremeHardy.com. Some of the best episodes, man, I have done of this podcast. So it's March 9th. You are in the ring. The AHFO is having a meeting. You want to make things right for the loss. You apologize to Private Party for being an asshole to them. And you take a vote. And ultimately, you are kicked out from the group after Private Party turns on you. They all start beating you up. Darby, Allin, and Sting try to make the save, but they're outnumbered. And then the Hardy Boy theme hits and outruns, as Jim Ross refers to him, Jeffrey Nero Hardy. And it is an amazing, amazing moment. There's this incredible hug between you guys that gets captured, and I know you hold that very near and dear to you, that moment. Take me through every second of being in the ring for that.
Yeah, so we had talked earlier in that day, depending on what's going on, there was a point where Private Party was going to step over and be on my side. There could have been a point if there's no Jeff, that Private Party could have turned. They could have still turned on me. We don't know. Once Jeff got there, and when that happened, Jeff hasn't signed a contract at this point, too. Just for the record, like we'd been given contracts to look them over, and they're just like, okay, well, let's go ahead and do this. And he'd already said, like, okay, well, this all sounds good. And he'd looked over the contract, but he hadn't officially put ink to paper yet. So we're sitting there, and we finally make the decision. Okay, now we know exactly what we're doing. We're going to go with Jeff. He's going to be coming in. And in my mind, how I wanted to see it, because like Jeff's a huge star. People love Jeff. They love that song he comes out to. The Juke is insanely popular and over. In my mind, I wanted to see those guys kicking the shit out of me. Sting and Darby trying to make the save. They're kicking the shit out of them. And I thought we could have had enough guys. They could have kicked the shit out of us enough that the Hardy Boyz music hits. Everybody stops and they focus now on Jeff. Jeff comes out and then he gets a little juke in, and then he like hits the ring after that. And then they could go back to like beating us down so they could kind of feed him 1 or 2 at a time, whatever. That's how I envisioned it. It didn't specifically turn out that way because there were guys that stayed on me, and Jeff like sped up the process and started running and doing this. So just so people know, this is how we wanted it to go down. And I was like, I was taking the lead for this segment as it was anyway, because I wanted Jeff to come out. I wanted him to get the big star pop. I wanted people to see him do the juke real quick. And I wanted all the heels standing at the front of the ring like, what the fuck? Here's Jeff Hardy coming. And then you have some of the heels come back and they start kicking the shit out of the babyface in the ring. Jeff comes in and then starts picking people off one at a time. And then eventually we get to where we got to, which was Twist of Fate Swanton at the very end.
Instead, Jeff has to run down to the ring and make the save, but he still finds time to try and get a quick little juke in. And it is hilarious in the best way possible because it was so authentically Jeff Hardy still.
Yeah, it was. That was very legit Jeff Hardy.
And so he's getting the dance in. He's also hitting the ring. You guys wipe the slate clean, Swanton bomb, and then there's the hug. How much did that moment mean to you, that hug?
It was great. The hug is something we never spoke about backstage. That wasn't planned. Jeff just showed up and people were going nuts. And I ran over and grabbed him. And almost at first, I feel like at first Jeff was almost taken back by it. And then you see like this big smile light up on his face, which there was. Oh, I get chills thinking about, because that was a very real moment, not something that was predetermined, not something that had been talked about. It was just something that happened organically in the moment. And it was very real and it came off as such. And I'm sure whenever I finish posting this, I'm going to put, Friday, Matt Hardy Pod, and I'm going to put a picture of that hug. And it really was. That's like it's a legitimate display of emotion between two guys that have been through so much and saw so much over such a long period of time. It it was a moment. It was a very, very real moment that you really can't duplicate. It was a real moment.
What was the reaction backstage to how all this came off?
I mean, obviously, people were very happy with that reaction he got. It got heavily critically acclaimed. People were very happy with how everything went down. And I remember there were a few people that were a little frustrated because that was our first time in the Fort Myers market, and ticket sales weren't as good as they wanted to be. But just the way people came alive for that segment, and Jeff returning, and that hug, and the reuniting of the Hardy Boyz. It was a moment, man. A moment that I treasure in my career.
What was Tony Khan's reaction backstage? I know you have a good, excited Tony Khan impression. I'd love to hear what it sounded like.
Let's fucking go! His enthusiasm, dude, his enthusiasm is just absolutely addictive, man.
Well, it was an amazing moment, and I had chills watching it live. I remember I was watching with someone. I can't remember who I was with, but I'm watching the segment, and I'm like, okay, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. I know it's coming, because at this point we communicate. I'm like, it's coming. Here it is. And then you just wait for that bass to drop, and that reaction. Because like I said, it wasn't a big crowd, but they came up huge, and it sounded like 20,000 people coming alive for Jeffrey Nero Hardy. It was incredible. So you guys then go about setting up all these different independent dates you're going to work together. In hindsight, was it the right decision to hit the ground running like that? Like, on one hand, you're going to make bank, you know that, but on the other hand, you're kind of going right back into the fold with no rest in between.
Yeah, looking back in hindsight, it may have been too much for Jeff. Of course, once again, I wasn't with him on a daily basis before then, and I was with him on a daily basis during these weekends, and it probably was overwhelming for him. So looking back in hindsight, I probably wish I would have changed and done like 2 weekends a month, maybe, because we went real hard and heavy, and I thought he was in a real good state, and I thought he could handle it. But looking back in hindsight, I would have changed it, and I would have made it lighter.
It's hard because these appearances that you guys were doing, you're doing signings and you're working matches. There's so much money involved with these things. I know you're not one to shy away from talking money here. So if I could ask, and you don't have to give an exact rate if you don't feel comfortable, but what kind of money are we talking with booking a weekend of Hardy appearances? How beneficial is that for you guys at this stage?
I mean, you're looking at every day 25 to 30 grand.
Wow. In total for both of you, you're saying?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing. Wow. So not chump change we're talking here. So it makes sense as to why you want to get the brand back out there. It's also your first chance to work indies in 5+ years here at this point. So what did you make of some of those?
And two, it was cool we were doing that. And like, even if he hadn't have shown up at AEW, I mean, we were still going to be doing that regardless. And part of it, also the mindset, we were going to turn me babyface anyway. You know, there's so many people that don't understand the value, and guys like myself and Jericho, whoever it may be. And Jericho's really, a top level guy when it comes to like world champion and legend and icon, whatever. But, you know, every time I would come out, even as a heel, once I did entertaining stuff as Big Money Matt, I was always getting cheered. And I still do. Every single week I come out, there's people in that building that grew up with me. And they cheer me, and they know me. I've been on TV almost 25 years straight, and a lot of that major global TV. And there's so many smart fans that are so critical, that are so entitled. Can Matt Hardy move? Can Matt Hardy do all the same thing he could 25 years ago? Of course not. I mean, reality. Father Time changes all of us as we get older. But is Matt Hardy still someone who contributes to a wrestling brand, and someone who wrestling fans want to pay money to see or like share and have an experience with? Of course. So I was going to turn babyface anyway. And then once we did determine Jeff was going to come to AEW and was going to sign an AEW contract, which happened after his segment that night. Dude, when you get the Hardy Boyz together, we're very blessed to have been one of the most influential tag teams in history. And that there is so much damn equity in Matt and Jeff Hardy together. And it's just unreal. And there's so much we can do to give back while still benefiting ourselves on a national level, like an AEW or WWE or Impact or ROH or wherever, anywhere. We're a big deal. And some people don't understand that, but we are, because we've been blessed and we've been gifted with so many hours of television time, and we're known all over the globe. So we're really blessed. That's why the Hardy Boyz are still around, guys. And I'm sorry if you hate us and you don't like seeing us on your TV screen, but that's why we're still around. And now that I feel like Jeff is in a good space and feels good about where he's at in life, if he ends up coming back, I feel like there's still a lot of positive things we can really, really do to make great contributions to the industry.
Does your gut say that you think he's going to come back?
My gut thinks he wants to. My gut thinks he wants to redeem himself. It's not going to be instantaneous. Once again, we haven't talked about stuff, and he's still having. He's taking care of some physical issues that he's been dealing with right now. So I don't think we've seen Jeff appear on AEW television for the last time. I think we'll see it again. In what capacity? I'm not sure of that right now. I can't speak, but I do think he wants to redeem himself. I think that's very important to him. He's looking for redemption.
Plus, it's not like you're in a rush either. You're in a storyline right now that you're genuinely, thoroughly enjoying doing. And
yes,
we didn't even talk about your match with Hook. You tap it quick. Now, Stankley's got his own one-on-one match with Hook. So
it couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Could have happened to a better guy. Now he's going to look like a flying Melinda out there after Hook.
Oh yeah,
on him.
when he puts those judo throws on him, he's going to look like a flying Melinda.
I saw Lee Moriarty doing the juke. He had a good juke.
He did have a good juke. Yeah, it's so funny when you see these guys that grew up. When I just was coming out, I said, "Yeah, you want to do anything?" And with Lee, I said, "I know you're kind of serious," I said, "but if you feel anything, man, we just kind of have fun when we go out there." And he was like, I've been holding that in for a while. I couldn't wait to bust that out.
Dude, Lee Moriarty, one of the best professional wrestlers I've ever seen on an indie show, and his ceiling hasn't even been close to reached.
And just a great quality human being too. What a great dude he is.
I'd like to make note of this, Matt. The 4-on-4 tag match I wrestled back at the end of 2021, around when you're not for Star Chen. Lee Moriarty happened to watch it, and he told me that it was the most entertaining pro wrestling match he's ever seen. So I just want to put that in there. I'm putting that on my cage match. Okay? That's going.
What a nice compliment.
That's going on my cage match. It's better than TLC 2, even. Just
there you have it, man.
Covering. No, listen, Josh Henny saying, I think once someone reaches the level Matt has in amount of time, becoming a babyface makes the most sense. It's so hard to boo a legend unless it's Christian Cage. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Christian Cage has always just had an unlikable face.
CLP has a very punchable face, and
very much so.
They should call him the CLB for CL Blue, because the blue dot will be all over his face. But, we were going to talk a little bit more about some of the matches that followed after this, but I think we should save those for when we do the episode about the Young Bucks feud coming up in a few weeks here, about a couple months, I should say, leading into the 1-year anniversary of the Double or Nothing match, which I know is a match that you hold very near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
Let's answer a few Ask Matt questions as we wrap things up here.
Yeah, let's do.
A wrestling historian, big fan of the show, says, why did Jeff stay with WWE in 2020 instead of joining AEW sooner?
Oh, that's a great question. So Jeff had suffered a couple injuries, and they had added time onto his contract. So if I'm not mistaken, it was 17 months.
He had about a year and a half added. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 17, 18 months added. So what they ended up doing is they offered Jeff a contract. They were going to give him a raise, but they were going to tack on like 5 or 6 months and make it 2 years and call it even. And it was kind of like, especially because I was at AEW, it was their hope in keeping him. And I feel like Jeff just took that because they offered him a pretty substantial raise. And that's also when guys were making more money because of the whole contract, wars and whatnot. There was a period there where WWE guys were getting really good money. The good brothers got really good money to come back to WWE, even though they had, verbally committed they were going to come to AEW. So they were trying to lock guys in, and he figured at the end of the day, he said, like, I've already got all this time left. He said, I might as well add 5 or 6 months and then make a lot more money. And that's why that ended up happening.
Trent wants to know, did Sting and Darby Allin know about Jeff showing up at AEW, or was it a surprise to them? I don't think he means in the segment himself, but maybe they show up to the arena that day. Are they surprised to see Jeff Hardy there?
Yeah, everyone was surprised to see him. I mean, there were some people that thought he may be there, but like when he walked up, there was a lot of like, hey, what's up, man? Yeah. I mean, so it was, we didn't know if he was going to be there that day or not, and he actually, his flight got delayed. He didn't get there that day until like 5 o'clock or 5:30, I want to say.
Stress.
So it was like I want to say Beth and Rebby got there around 2:30 or 3, and they actually just went to the hotel and hung out. And then when Jeff came, they came over to the venue as well. But yeah, Jeff had a flight that was like 2 hours delayed that day, so he definitely got in later.
Were Sting and Jeff cool after Victory Road? I know it had been so many years prior, but had they made amends on that front?
Oh, always. Sting constantly throughout my run at AEW, he would say, "Hey, how's your brother doing? Please tell him I said hello. I think about him a lot." Yeah, they'd been great. Whenever that incident happened, they hung after that, and they interacted a lot, and they stayed in contact. And yeah, they're great. And Sting loves Jeff. I mean, he knows that he's like one of the sweetest souls ever. And I know Jeff obviously is hugely fond of Sting, being one of the guys he grew up watching, and just he loves him as a person as well.
A girly tomboy X asks, what did you both do backstage before and after this moment?
I mean, before, we literally tried to piece this segment together and figure out what we're doing. A funny line. I'm pretty sure I've said this on here before, but Jeff just said, like, I said, I'm kind of thinking we do this. They're going to go, I love the way Andrade said, we take a vote, and they did the deal. And then Muhammad Private Party like votes me up. And then they do the deal where they turn it down. And we put this segment together. And Jeff said, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. He said, what do we got to do? Just like go to the writers and clear this? And I said, there's no writers here, brother. as long as TK's good with it, we're good with it. And that was a very funny story. That's my favorite moment, pre-segment with Jeff. So yeah, we did that. We came back. We had a couple vignettes we had to do. We did a BTE segment. And then whenever we left, we treated ourselves that night. Myself, Jeff, Beth, and Rebby ate at a Waffle House because that was the only thing that we could find open by our hotel. So we had a great meal at the Waffle House, and it ended up being right towards the end of the show. And then like a ton of fans came in, and we took about 15 or 16 pictures on the way out.
Wow. Did you have the butterflies knowing that Jeff's music was about to hit when you were in the ring?
No, I don't think I had the butterflies then. I was excited for it. I was just out there. It was one of those things that was just like boom, 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 boom. And like we were putting this together last minute. And sometimes, me personally, I feel like when you put something together so last minute, you're out there and you're so in the moment of like, let me react, or what should I say here? What is the best course of, what is the best course of conduct, to really parlay this message I'm trying to tell the fan. And I was just so in the moment of like trying to perform as I'm doing this. It's not like I had something that is memorized. It was just like easy, where there was no pressure. I was more or less focused on what I was doing in the segment to try and make it as compelling as possible. But then once I heard the music and he came out and the reaction he got, that's when I got goosebumps. That's when I had that feeling in my stomach that was like, wow, this is cool shit, man.
Yeah. It's
awesome to be a part of another moment like this. I've been, just gifted with so many amazing moments throughout my career, and it was cool to have another one.
There might have been even more anxiety if you had known for months that Jeff was coming in, because then you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for that moment. Here, you literally didn't know until an hour and a half before that he was even going to be on the show.
Right.
So it makes it a little easier. I got one more comment here from someone that I just want to read to you. from Lissy. So not a question, but seeing this moment brought a tear to both mine and my brother's eye. When we were younger, we used to wrestle our stuffed animals and pretend we were the Hardys. I was Matt. He was Jeff. Seeing our childhood come back together was beautiful. Thank you, Hardys.
Very cool.
What a cool.
Very cool. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
That
It means a lot to us. Like we've said this since day one. We had this mentality whenever we started. Without you, that's the wrestling fans, there would be no us. I mean, Jeff and I, we've always tried to go out of our way to be nice and kind to wrestling fans, because at our core, in our heart, that's exactly what we were as well. And I know if I'm meeting a wrestler that I'm a big fan of, and he was kind and he was giving of his time to me and respectful and treated me nice, I would love that guy forever. And I feel like that's why a lot of the fans have had such a great love for us, because Jeff and I, we've tried to live our life that way, especially with the way we interact with our fans, because we know how important it is to them.
Great stuff, Matt. You and I are going to revisit this time period at the end of May when we talk about the Double or Nothing match against the Young Bucks next week on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. Ready for this? We are going to be looking at the 5-year anniversary. Can't believe this. 5-year anniversary of the Ultimate Deletion. You and Bray Wyatt head to the Hardy compound. This is something I know you've wanted to talk about in long form on this podcast. We talked about it a little bit on our Bray Wyatt episode, but you said there were a lot of things to really dig into here. What can people look forward to on the Ultimate Deletion episode?
Oh my God, this is going to be amazing. First and foremost, we're like delving into an area which I had a lot of expertise in after having all these cinematic matches in TNA, and to inject Vince McMahon into the equation. Some incredibly and amazingly entertaining stories come out of this, and also some very much Vince is the boss, do exactly what he says and don't stray from it. A lot of that came from management and the production team on the site as well. So there's a lot of fun moments to tell in this one. There's going to be some memorable Vince McMahon quotes as well.
So make sure you get your questions in for that. Hashtag Ask Matt at Matt Hardy Pod, at Matt Hardy Brand, at John Alba on social media. And if you would like to partner up with us here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, we're going to be welcoming in some new sponsors over the course of the next few weeks. Head on over to join us at advertisewithhardy.com. Get your business or your entity, your device, your product, whatever it may be, in front of thousands of listeners every single week here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. That's advertisewithhardy.com. And of course, Matt, we encourage everyone to head on over to adfreeshows.com, where you can get up close and in person with Matt and I as we do live tapings like this, or that fantastic TLC 2 watch along. You really had a blast with that, didn't you?
That was so much fun, man. Such a good time, dude. And I'm going to call Maxwell before we sign off, too, because Maxwell's going to come in here and have a couple comments. So, hey, Maxwell! All right, come on, dude. So, also, too, one thing, I was talking about all these different pillars. I also want to include Britt Baker,
for sure.
DMD, also in one of the pillars. Hey, yep, come here, Maxwell. Come in here. I'm going to slide over a little bit. Hello, everyone. In case you don't know it, this is my son. Come right here, Maxwell. My firstborn. This is Maxwell Hardy. How old are you, Maxwell?
7.
All right, very good. This is John. You've spoke with John before on the phone. He's the guy that hosts my podcast. And also, Maxwell, we're doing this live, and there's a lot of the people that are called Top Guys and Top Girls that subscribe to the podcast. They're watching this live. So you want to say hi, Top Guys?
Hi.
And I want to ask you this. We talked about Tio a lot today. Tio is the Spanish name for uncle, in case anyone out there doesn't know that. And that's typically what they call Jeff. Tell me, what do you like about Jeff?
He's good at painting. And he's good at wrestling.
You're good. You can look right here, Max. So just look at the screen. Look there. He's good at painting. He's good at wrestling. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think you're more like Dada or you more like Tio?
Dada.
All right. Who's more like Tio?
Wolfie.
Why?
Because, he trains his hair most of the time.
And what else? Say it. Because he's what?
Crazy. He is.
Maxwell, I heard the other day that Wolfie played a prank on you with a hamburger. Is that true?
Oh, tell him when we're IHOP. Tell him what he did. Tell the
story here real quick.
Yeah, share the story.
All right, so Wolfie put hot sauce on my bread. And Dad, Wolfie told Dad to say, "Hey, Maxwell, Wolfie put some yummy ketchup on your burger." So I took a bite out of it.
And how'd you feel?
It was spicy.
It was spicy. Did it make your mouth burn? It didn't make your mouth burn?
It wasn't that hot.
Oh, wasn't that? Okay. Well, he's
It was
a Texas kid
unexpected.
at that.
You were not
Yeah,
expecting.
it was unsuspected. And what'd you say? Water! That was a very funny little rib, though. When we were doing
Now, Maxwell, when you're older, your dad is going to tell you a story about going to a rest stop with Michael Freebird Hayes, but that's going to come down the line for you. I promise you. Your dad has been on the receiving end of some pranks himself in the wrestling world. So
there's this guy in wrestling, Maxwell. Do you know how he would prank people? He would try and pee on them. Isn't that crazy? That's incomprehensible. Can't even comprehend it.
That's
Hey,
all
Maxwell,
you want to say to the fans before we wrap up here?
is there anything else you want to say? What about Tio?
Um,
Is Tio a cool dude?
Yeah.
What do you like about going to his house?
mm,
I know what Wolfie always says. Wolfie always says, "I love running up the hills."
I like, like running around a lot and jumping like the hills and jumping.
Everyone out there, Jeff has like an 1.5 acre motocross track still, which he doesn't really ride on anymore. And something that's very scary. Do you know Ruby's riding a motorcycle? Ruby does. His 12-year-old daughter. She's riding a motorcycle and she's riding up and down these hills. And now she's kind of taken over the motorcycle stuntman. But him and Wolfie, they would race around the track like maniacs. They would love running up and down the hills.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Barty, you going to come in here?
Oh, we got Barty Hardy now.
You want to say hello? Barty, come here. Get up. Can people see you? Barty, say hello to everybody. Say
Hey,
hi.
Barty. See you, Max.
Say hi.
Hi.
All right. Hey, Maxwell, send Wolfie in here if he wants to come real quick because we're getting ready to wrap up.
Good cameo here. This is what you get. Hey, Kelly Cox says, don't give Maxwell any rib ideas there.
You're right.
Gotta be.
All right. So we're getting some. So, hey, Barty, you want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye. Do you want to say broken, Barty?
Broken body.
Can you give us a good
Come
delete,
on here.
Bart?
You were just wearing the broken Matt Hardy thing. Do you like wearing the broken Matt Hardy robe? Look right in here. Look right in
Barty,
the
can you
screen
give
so
us a
everybody
good
can see.
delete?
How beautiful. Do delete. 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 All right.
I love it.
Sounds good. All right, Barty. We're finishing up the podcast. Tell everyone bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And say bye-bye, Mr. John.
Bye-bye, Mr. John.
All right.
See you later, Barty. Josh Field says the whole gaggle is in the house. Yes, it is. It is.
They're everywhere.
Are we getting a Wolfie cameo before we wrap, or are we?
I don't know.
calling
It sounds like Wolfie's actually doing some art right now. They were.
Oh,
he's
all
in
right.
the middle of creating.
Okay. Well, the
On
word,
top of being an artist like T.O. and dyeing his hair like T.O., he's also crazy. That's Matthew's It's crazy.
the words have been spoken this week. Matt Hardy, anything else you want to add?
No, this was a lot of fun. Looking back, hey,
I just found out a way.
There's nothing
assortment
sacred
of
anymore.
beverages.
Look at you.
Goodness.
All right, thank you guys for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Oh my God, there's Wolfie, but he doesn't have a shirt on. Say something.
So he is really.
Oh, you are not there. Hey, Wolfie, what do you like about going to Tio's?
It looks like
boy.
Barty's mining for some gold there, Matt Hardy.
Hey, Barty, what are you doing? Stop that, you freak. Anyway, all right.
The words have been spoken, my friends. We'll see you next week right here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy.
You're 3 years old. You're too old to do that. Mining for gold.